There are transmissions that solve mysteries, transmissions that verify theories, and then there are transmissions that shatter everything, transmissions that make scientists pause mid-sentence, gaze silently at the screens, and question if humanity has just overstepped a boundary it was never intended to overstep. Alone in the deep vacuum for over 46 years, Voyager 2 has just dispatched one of those transmissions. This time, what arrived through the Deep Space Network wasn't similar to the plasma hums, the solar echoes, or the interstellar shocks we've encountered before. Buried within the faintest whisper of radio energy that traveled more than 12 billion miles across the void, this transmission held patterns, structured, layered, rhythmic pulses. And worse still, this new signal arrived after Voyager 2 went silent for 7 months, after NASA realigned the antenna against staggering odds, and after every onboard instrument was stretched beyond its planned lifespan. It arrived when Voyager should have remained quiet. It arrived from a location where no spacecraft has ever stayed operational. It arrived from an area where even the sun's hold weakens and the galaxy's genuine environment emerges. And the mission team's tone reveals everything. Voyager 2 didn't merely transmit data. It transmitted something resembling a warning, a whisper, or a message from deep space itself. This evening, we journey from the launch of the twin probes to the instant this new transmission arrived on Earth. And we reveal why this single fragment of radio energy has left NASA terrified, fascinated, and incapable of explaining what Voyager 2 has really meant. To grasp the transmission, we need to grasp the source of the machine that dispatched it. And that source starts with an alignment so uncommon it occurs only once every 176 years. In 1965, when space exploration remained more a dream than a field, Gary Flandreau, a graduate student equipped with just a pencil and an instinct for orbital mechanics, discovered a cosmic setup that would alter human history. The four giants of our solar system, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, were gradually shifting into a flawless gravitational staircase, a setup allowing a spacecraft to hop from one world to another using their gravity like celestial catapults. This alignment would shrink what should have been a 30-year voyage into merely 12. And when NASA grasped what Flandreau had found, the agency redirected its whole approach and started secretly constructing two machines that would exploit this once-in-a-lifetime pathway to flee the solar system completely. From that cosmic opportunity, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 emerged, designed to climb gravity like a ladder and access worlds no eyes had witnessed. But what nobody comprehended then was that this alignment also directed the Voyager probes onto paths that would drive them far into the interstellar medium, into zones where the sun's influence fades and only the galaxy's unrefined environment persists. The very alignment that enabled the Grand Tour also enabled this transmission. On August 20th, 1977, Voyager 2 launched. A modestly appearing spacecraft cloaked in gold-colored insulation, fueled by plutonium heat and directed by computers that now possess less memory than a digital watch. It turned into one of humanity's most successful explorers. It endured Jupiter's radiation storms. It endured Saturn's rings. It endured the eerie, frozen wastelands of Uranus. And it became history's only spacecraft to visit Neptune, soaring past its sapphire atmosphere and observing the great dark spot whirl under blue methane clouds. En route, it uncovered new moons, rings, volcanoes, nitrogen geysers, extreme winds, and enigmas that astrophysicists still labor to decipher. Then, as its cameras were deactivated, as its final images were saved on its aging tape recorder, Voyager 2 traversed the edge where the solar system concludes, the helipause, and ventured into interstellar space. Ever since, it has depended on the Deep Space Network to murmur signals over a distance so vast it requires 18 hours for Voyager's message to arrive on Earth. But the tale doesn't conclude there, because as Voyager 2 ventured deeper, its power started to diminish. NASA deactivated heaters, turned off instruments, relinquished non-essential systems, one after another simply to sustain the probe. Nevertheless, in 2020, the spacecraft went silent for 7 months, disappearing into the emptiness. And when NASA at last re-established contact, Voyager 2 acted in a manner nobody anticipated. Its data proved inconsistent, its orientation inexplicably adjusted, and then the initial odd anomalies started appearing in its readings. Anomalies that now re-emerge in the new transmission. Voyager 2 didn't merely explore planets. It disclosed entire worlds that overhauled science. Upon reaching Jupiter, it relayed images of swirling storms and iridescent clouds bigger than Earth itself. It observed lightning detonate across Jovian nights, and its cameras captured Io erupting with volcanic flames, the first active volcanoes observed beyond Earth. These findings alone should have shaped Voyager's legacy. But the probe wasn't finished. At Saturn, it navigated a barrage of icy particles, surviving strikes from ring debris traveling at thousands of miles per hour. It passed Titan and sensed an atmosphere denser than Earth's, suggesting chemical enigmas scientists debate even now. Then arrived Uranus, the coldest and oddest of the giants. Voyager 2 discovered rings, found 10 new moons, noted a tilted magnetic field, and glimpsed a world toppled sideways by ancient cosmic force. Following that came Neptune, with winds howling at 1,000 miles per hour, storms the size of continents, and Triton, a frozen moon spewing nitrogen geysers 5 miles high. All these meetings constructed an image of a solar system teeming with violence and intricacy. But they also instructed NASA something more. The farther you venture, the weirder the physics grows. And once Voyager 2 crossed the helipause, everything the spacecraft noted, plasma, magnetic fields, particle density, acted in ways scientists weren't ready for. And now, decades on, those identical regions appear linked to the unforeseen transmission. Before Voyager's cameras were permanently deactivated, Carl Sagan persuaded NASA to pivot Voyager 1 and seize one final portrait. A mosaic of the inner solar system viewed from 3.8 billion miles distant. One frame in that mosaic held our whole world, a tiny speck hanging in a sunbeam so minuscule it could be confused for dust. The pale blue dot, an image that transformed philosophy, astronomy, and human self-perception. And after that instant, the Voyagers fell dark. No more photos, no more color, no more views of worlds. Only sensors, instruments, and radio signals. Data conveyed in binary through space's silence. Voyager turned blind, but it didn't turn mute. It kept drifting outward, relaying reports of cosmic rays, magnetic fields, plasma density, and ultimately the clear indicators of interstellar space. But as years elapsed, those reports grew harder to decipher. Instruments faltered, tape capacity dwindled, errors multiplied. Manuals from the 1970s became the mission team's sole anchor. And then, after almost half a century of journeying, Voyager 2 started transmitting something that eluded technical rationale. A repeating pattern, a faint structured hum, and measurements unmatched by any known interstellar plasma behavior. Initially, it appeared a glitch. Then it recurred. Then it intensified. Until at last, in its newest transmission, something novel surfaced. Something NASA can't categorize. Once Voyager 2 passed Neptune and floated into the cold expanse, it neared a region scientists had speculated about for decades, but never directly witnessed. The helipause, the sun's influence's outermost limit. This is where the solar wind, a steady flow of charged particles streaming outward from the sun, finally yields under the interstellar medium's pressure. In basic terms, it's the divide between our cosmic yard and all else. Models foresaw a gradual shift, a soft decline, a mild plasma flow exchange. But Voyager 2 didn't encounter something mild. It encountered turmoil. Pressure waves battered the spacecraft. Charged particles fluctuated wildly. Magnetic fields contorted in fierce, unforeseen ways. Plasma density leaped by a factor NASA deemed impossible. And for history's first time, Humanity sampled the raw, unaltered interstellar space environment. But the most alarming aspect, the transition didn't mirror what Voyager 1 noted years prior. The boundary proved thinner, sharper, more dynamic, almost as if something had agitated it, displaced it, or altered it since the initial probe's crossing. That discrepancy didn't add up. And now, following the latest transmission, scientists are re-evaluating the chance that Voyager 2 didn't just cross a border. It crossed into something's domain. Once Voyager 2 formally exited the heliosphere, it stepped into a domain of pure interstellar plasma, material untouched by the sun for billions of years. NASA presumed it would be silent there, a sort of cosmic barrenness. But that presumption crumbled nearly instantly. Voyager started sensing a hum, a steady low-frequency vibration resonating through the plasma, too consistent for random noise, too regulated for natural disturbance. It pulsed. It ascended and descended. It altered in manners implying an underlying beat, almost like a far-off engine rumbling in the shadows. This wasn't the disordered, unforeseeable setting scientists anticipated. It was structured, tiered, almost arranged like something buzzing under the cosmic foundations. Voyager 2 was detecting something, and the deeper it journeyed into the emptiness, the sharper that hum grew. Through the years, its frequency wandered, transformed, reacted to unidentified changes. And now, within the most recent transmission, that hum altered drastically, as if something in the interstellar medium had abruptly stirred, shifted, or reacted to Voyager's existence. In 2020, Voyager 2's communication vanished. Not for minutes, not for hours, but for 7 lengthy months. NASA attributed it to a misalignment of the Canberra dish in Australia, the sole antenna able to reach the probe. But that account never completely convinced the mission experts, because when contact was at last regained, the data Voyager 2 relayed was altered. The magnetic field measurements had changed. The plasma density had moved unexpectedly. And even stranger, the spacecraft had slightly realigned itself, adjusting its antenna without NASA's directives. But here's the element that still troubles the mission team. Voyager 2 shouldn't manage autonomous orientation corrections anymore. The systems built for that have deteriorated for decades. Yet somehow amid the blackout, Voyager maintained its path and directed back toward Earth with nearly flawless accuracy. And soon after that recovery, the anomalies in the interstellar hum grew more distinct. That 7-month lapse now appears less like a communication breakdown and more like something meddled, disrupted, or engaged with the probe. When Voyager 2 resumed full communication, scientists started observing something their formulas couldn't explain. The magnetic field lines near the spacecraft weren't acting as interstellar media models forecasted. Rather than flowing evenly, they curved slowly, then abruptly, almost as if the craft were passing through an invisible trail. The type that develops behind a vessel cutting through the sea. Natural magnetic waves don't form that pattern. Plasma turbulence doesn't form that pattern, but an object traversing space does. The distortions proved too balanced, too pristine, too fluid, and they persisted too long for randomness. One engineer likened it to Voyager 2 crossing the exhaust of something massive. NASA shunned that phrasing publicly, but internally the team recognized the chance that Voyager 2 might have intersected with something traveling through interstellar space, something able to disrupt magnetic lines on enormous scales. Only now, with the freshest transmission, has that chance become unavoidable. Interstellar plasma should act like a turbulent ocean, unforeseeable, stormy, endlessly shifting. But the plasma oscillations Voyager 2 started sensing were far from haphazard. They rose in flawless intervals, recurring with such exactness that they evoked code more than disturbance. At times the oscillations aligned with Voyager's engineering broadcasts. Other times they adjusted frequency responding to the probe's standard pings. That should be unfeasible. Plasma doesn't react to spacecraft signals that way. But something did in the newest transmission. These oscillations not only reappeared, they advanced, creating intricate harmonics unseen in prior data. At least one such harmonic aligns with the rhythm Voyager 2 has broadcast for decades, almost as if something had mastered echoing the probe's pulse back to us. Voyager 2 runs on radioactive decay, a consistent, foreseeable process that lessens slightly each year. But prior to dispatching the most recent transmission, engineers spotted something odd. A brief rise in transmission stability and power steadiness, almost as if the probe gained a surge or met a zone of lessened interference. That should be unfeasible. The RTGs can't boost power output. The systems can't grow more stable over time. Yet for a short span, Voyager acted as if its waning core had revived. Some proposed it entered a region with reduced cosmic ray disruption. Others suggested a fleeting magnetic field alignment. But the timing matches too flawlessly with the structured patterns in the new transmission. Something steadied Voyager 2, whether ambient or outside, right before it relayed its mission's most enigmatic signal. When the Deep Space Network at last captured the initial packets of Voyager 2's new transmission, the engineers anticipated the typical faint carrier tones, plasma data, engineering records, and temperature readings. But this time, the carrier tone wasn't faint. It was too steady, too crisp, too managed, almost like something assisted in strengthening the signal. Then the data flow started revealing anomalies. Repeating sequences nestled within noise, timing spans unmatched by the spacecraft's normal telemetry cycle, and frequency shifts nobody had witnessed for Voyager. These anomalies weren't faults. They were deliberate patterns. As the flow persisted, multiple pulses came at impeccably timed spans that aligned with neither engineering procedures nor scientific sampling. Something was altering the transmission, and then NASA grasped the most disquieting aspect. Voyager 2 wasn't every pulse's origin. Some originated outside the spacecraft, from someplace close. Within the transmission were gaps, deliberate silences spaced too accurately for random noise or breakdown. These silences functioned like dividers, splitting the pulses into groups almost like headers in a digital document. NASA analysts applied every compression method available, and the timing setup of these gaps evoked packet structure, not natural plasma action. Even more alarming, the gaps created a repeating loop exactly every 3.2 minutes. The identical loop Voyager 2 employs for engineering log transmissions. Whatever replied to Voyager comprehended Voyager's timing. It acted like it was imitating the probe, communicating in the beat Voyager itself employed, almost as if to declare, "I see you." Scientists now think the silences aren't vacant. They're coded pauses, awaiting intervals, maybe even appeals. One of the initial checks NASA performs on any anomalous transmission is the Doppler shift, the minor frequency alteration from motion. And when they conducted that review, the reality struck them like a barrier. Not only did certain pulses originate outside the spacecraft, they were shifting fluidly, shifting foreseeably, shifting in manners aligned with neither dust nor rocks nor plasma waves. Something with mass, considerable mass, was repositioning near Voyager 2. It wasn't floating like fragments. It wasn't spinning like an asteroid. It was performing controlled, intentional tweaks. And at one data stream point, the Doppler shift altered swiftly, almost like the object executed a maneuver. That maneuver aligned with a magnetic field warp Voyager sensed in the same minute. Something shifted close to the probe, and the probe captured that movement's trail. The further scientists examined the transmission, the more links they discovered. Plasma oscillations aligning with Voyager's telemetry patterns, magnetic warps synced with Doppler shifts, signal surges timed with thruster oddities. Every data fragment directed to the same horrifying conclusion. The probe wasn't solitary. Something nearby Voyager 2 was engaging with its surroundings, replying to its broadcasts, and shifting with clear purpose. And the nearer researchers inspected, the more they grasped something further. These patterns had accumulated for months, perhaps years, concealed in the noise since nobody sought them. The transmission wasn't the start. It was the disclosure. In the transmission's final minute, the oddest sequence surfaced. a series of modulations that nearly flawlessly matched Voyager's own outbound signal, but with faint variances, as if the signal had been reflected back with improvements. It wasn't a bounce. It wasn't dispersion. It was a response crafted to mimic Voyager's tone so tightly that even NASA's software labeled it as probe similar before human analysts stepped in. Those closing pulses were too pristine, too balanced, and too purposeful for noise. And they concluded with one last, unmistakable silence, the same duration as the header silence before each group. A start, a message, and a close, a full framework. Something replied. When NASA assembled the engineering records, the magnetic data, the plasma oscillations, the Doppler shifts, and the anomalous pulses into one timeline, the mission team had to face a reality they never readied for. Voyager 2 didn't merely dispatch data. It dispatched proof of contact, not with a planet, not with a comet, not with plasma, but with an object that shifted, an object that replied, an object that conveyed in structured patterns. Something sophisticated enough to near a 46-year-old machine racing at 35,000 miles per hour and address it in its own beat. Something lurking in the shadows between stars. Something we didn't sense until it chose to disclose itself. The transmission is no longer an enigma. It is a message. And now humanity must determine what follows. So now the query is, what triggered the transmission? Do we attempt to connect again? Do we dispatch another signal? Do we await another response? If this finding rattled you as deeply as it rattled NASA's Deep Space Network, don't fade quietly into the darkness. Subscribe, because what follows could reshape our cosmic grasp. Like this video, so more individuals comprehend the gravity of what just occurred. And share in the comments. Do you believe this transmission was a greeting, a warning, or the onset of something much larger than we're ready for? I'd love to hear what you think about this, so drop a comment below. If you enjoyed our conversation today, please share this video and subscribe to help the channel grow. Every bit of support counts.